Welcome to the Sidecar Sync podcast, your home for all things innovation, artificial intelligence, and associations.
The ocean has a voice, and for 40 years, Dr. Denise Herzing has been listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sidecar Sync podcast. My name is Mallory Mejias, and I'm one of your hosts, along with Amit Nagarajan. And today, we are joined by the very special Dr. Denise Herzing. As a marine biologist and behavioral researcher, she spent decades swimming with Atlantic spotted dolphins in the Bahamas, recording their clicks, whistles, and bursts in an effort to understand how they communicate. Dr. Herzing is the founder and research director of the Wild Dolphin Project and was recently named to the Time AI 100 list for her pioneering work using artificial intelligence to decode dolphin communication. Her research now powers DolphinGemma, a collaboration with Georgia Tech and Google DeepMind, and the first large language model trained on dolphin vocalizations. In our conversation, Dr. Herzing shares how AI is revealing hidden structure in dolphin sounds and what that means for the study of language itself, what it takes to make 40 years of field data usable for modern AI tools, why her team believes open source collaboration is the future of animal communication research, and how projects like DolphinGemma remind us that technology, when used wisely, can help us listen more closely to the natural world. Everybody, please enjoy this interview with Dr. Denise Herzing. Dr. Denise Herzing, thank you so much for joining us on the Sidecar Sync podcast. What an honor to have you here. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm glad to be here. It's an exciting time in AI. So yeah, we're talking dolphins and AI these days.
I know. I have to say this is a first for us on the podcast. I don't think we have ever discussed dolphins, but I'm excited to be doing that today with you.
Okay, let's do it.
I always like to start off these interview episodes with a little bit about your background from your perspective. So can you take us back to the beginning of your career? What made you start studying dolphins and kind of tell us where you are at this moment in time?
I was really inspired as a 12-year-old, believe it or not, just from looking through the encyclopedia when we had books. And I would stop at the whale and dolphin page and I'd be like, what is going on in their minds? Do we know? And kind of simultaneously, like Jane Goodall was out doing chimpanzees, Diane Fossey was doing gorillas, Cynthia Moss was doing elephants, and Jacques Cousteau had opened up the ocean world. And so I was like, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. So I studied marine biology, did some graduate work with dolphins and whales and seals and sea lions, but kept focused on, I was really interested in dolphin minds, dolphin communication. And when I got to the point of graduate school, I moved from San Francisco to Florida to work in the Bahamas. And I found a place. I was kind of surprised no one was really out there working, but I said, well, I'll plant myself here for 20 years. Now it's 40 years, but who's counting?
Yeah.
And really from the beginning, I knew I wanted to record sound and behavior. I wanted to understand the individual roles, the society, their behavior, and just see what we could learn. Because I chose the Bahamas because you can see underwater. And most places in the world, it's not so easy to research dolphins or whales underwater because it's murky. So that was my goal, was to take a look underwater, which is where they really behave. So I was lucky to find a great site. I was lucky to find a species that was relatively friendly to humans over time, at least, and had a very full, visible life at sea. So here I am, 40 plus years later, and my dream has come true because AI now exists. So I knew it would come. I actually knew it would someday. There'd be a computer I could throw my sounds in and make sense of. Meanwhile, we're doing all this manual work, pulling sounds out with behavior. But it's here now. So we have a great data set and we're using it for that reason.
I love that phrasing. AI was a dream come true and that you knew it was coming. I feel like we've heard that a lot on the podcast, and Meath talks about that as well, of kind of a lot of converging innovations that had to happen in order to make AI kind of explode in the way that we know it, but the building blocks were there all along.
Right. Yeah, no, it's exciting.
So you founded the Wild Dolphin Project in 1985?
Yeah, I set up the Wild Dolphin Project as a nonprofit so I could
Mhm.
run my grant money through it. And I had individuals who wanted to help with the work over time. So, yeah, we've built it over the years, and that's how we run our work in our organization. And we have a 60-foot power catamaran that was actually donated to us
Wow.
in 1992. So that became the permanent platform for our work. It's a nice, stable, live aboard platform. So that lets us go where the dolphins live, which is kind of the first step.
Wow. What did technology look like back in 1985 compared to what you can do now with AI? What did that look like when you were collecting research out in the field?
Well, I always had video and sound through,
Okay.
commercial cameras. So the sound range was human hearing only. And we know dolphins make sounds way up ultrasonically, right? And there were some ways to record high frequency. They were pretty challenging for our situation because we were in the water swimming with the dolphins away.
Mhm.
We're not
Yeah.
like hooked up to the boat with a hydrophone hanging because they aren't hanging around the boat. They're on the move. So yeah, it was really basic. I think we had one of the original soundboards that we put in our Mac computers that was like $5,000 or something. It was crazy, but it did like real time. We could analyze it with spectrograms. And in graduate school, I actually had, you won't remember it. Many people won't remember it. I had a cylinder,
Mhm.
the old fax machines that worked with carbon paper. It was a cylinder where you put sounds in and it rotated, sketched out the sounds on
Wow.
carbon paper. It was crazy, but that's how we got our images of dolphin sound. So, and then once it became digital, of course, everything's digital, right? But we've gone through a lot of technology. The cameras got smaller, the sound recording then became high frequency. And we worked with different colleagues to sort of evolve that over time. So we kept improving the technology as it turned up. And now it's all GoPros and high frequency recorders and 360 cameras. Wow. Also a great thing for behavior. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so technology is our friend.
We love to hear it on the Sidecar Sync podcast. Now, Dr. Denise, we found you. Well, you're a very well known figure, but we found you when you were selected to the Time AI
Uh,
100 list. So I've got to say, congrats to you on that. What was that recognition like for you?
Thank you. Well, it was kind of a surprise because I'm on the user end, right? I work with this great team at Georgia Tech in Atlanta, that's Starner's Computer Group, and the Google folks, DeepMind, they're the ones doing the AI and working with our data. So it was a real honor to also just showcase there are other purposes for AI that maybe we haven't thought of. And of course, science, of course, is huge, and medical is probably, I think, the best example of a great use of AI. But scientists like myself, we have smaller data sets. We want quicker ways to look at it. And our human minds are great, but AI can really help with pattern recognition that we can't get at. So I think in some ways it's letting go of like humans, we can do everything. We're so smart. It's like,
Huh.
ooh, we've created a tool that probably is smarter or quicker in ways that our brains kind of can do, but we're not there
Right.
yet, whatever. So it helps us mine our data. So yeah, so it was a cool honor. Like I said, a
Wow.
surprise to be with those amazing people, the other 99 awardees. And they're the ones that have done the work, right? It's like I wanted to thank them for creating these AI tools more than anything because I'm just using it for my science, which is
Well,
great.
but I've got to shout you out too. You're taking that amazing technology and utilizing it in a very unique and
Yeah.
interesting way. So shout out to you for that.
And what's interesting is that the current AI system with DolphinGemma that we're doing
Hmm.
with Google, it's really designed. It's modeled after with our acoustic data. It's been trained with our acoustic data, but the whole point of it also is to create an architecture where other researchers can put in their own data and use it. So it's not just like, okay, we're looking at dolphins, great. It's meant to scale up to other researchers. That's a really important point to do science is that you want to create tools that you can all use and then compare potentially, right? So
We're big proponents of open source technology here on the podcast. Was that always the plan? I know you said you collaborated with Georgia Tech. I'm based in Atlanta, actually, and with Google DeepMind, but was open source always the plan when you were working on DolphinGemma?
DolphinGemma, yeah, it's always been planned to be open source.
Mhm.
It's not yet. They're still working on updating some architecture with some Gemini stuff. But yeah, no, that was the plan, certainly with DolphinGemma to share it. Hmm.
Yep. After you said 40 years, you kind of whispered it at the beginning of the podcast. After 40 years, before we get into more of the technical breakthroughs and what you've learned, if you could sum up what you've learned about dolphins, as it might be a very challenging question for you, in 40 years, what would you tell our audience? Like, what do you want our listeners to know that most people probably get wrong when it comes to dolphins?
So dolphins are very long-lived, complex social mammal. They have friends, they have families, they have fights. They have a lot to communicate about. They can live until their 50s, so there's a lot of knowledge in the elders in a dolphin community. They have cultures, they're unique. So when we see oceans crashing and food sources drying up, we're losing cultures of dolphins and whales, like we would consider cultures of humans, losing them for not saving the environment. They're smart. The species I work with had past tense, a particularly, I won't say easy life, but they had a year-round food source, so they had a lot of leisure time, I guess I would say, like, again, like human cultures might in
Hmm.
productive areas where they live. So we've been able to spend time with them, both observing them and interacting with them in various ways. They're smart. They interact with other dolphin species. There are bottlenose dolphins, along with the spotted dolphins that you see above me here.
Wow.
Uh, so they interact complicated lives with their neighbors. They cooperate with them. They also fight with them. So they kind of work through it. Um, I really do think we're going to find some complicated parts that might show that they have some kind of language. It's a tough definition for people to swallow, right? But social mammals with long lives and complicated sensory systems have the potential for that. Sperm whales, dolphin species, orcas, we don't know. And I'm just excited because we
Hmm.
finally have a tool to answer this question potentially. And there's other land mammals too. People are looking at all sorts of species, penguins and elephants. And so it applies to all of nature, even ecosystems potentially. And it's just a question if we're willing to listen and explore nature relative to our place in it.
Beautifully said. When it comes to Dolphin Gemma, you said, so this is a large language model that has been trained on how many years of sounds, would you say?
Think they have about 8 or 9, maybe 10 years
Wow.
of sound, and then, again, it's various sizes of sound depending on the years. We have a lot more to throw into the model as soon as they
Right?
kinda get it updated, and, yeah, it's generative AI, right? So it allows us to prompt it with a sound and see what comes out, which is pretty cool, right?
Okay.
So it should show us patterns that are likely to follow, like a whistle or a sequence of squawks or something, and we're trying to integrate it and then go back in our video and say, "Okay, what is going on when this pattern is in the sound, right? And are they doing the same thing? Can we encode it like we might encode words or phonemes, like human speech, and then take a look at it and see, what do we see?" We have the underwater video. We can go back and look at what matches, and we know
Ah,
the individual, so we could say, that's a pattern from a mom and a calf. And oh, it's a little different, but it's a different mom and calf here, right? Maybe with a different name or signature whistle, which is their name basically. So it has to be tested. And the most challenging part of it, even after we get through looking at our video with these sound patterns, will be to correctly interpret it.
right.
And we should be able to do a lot of that with our video, but it's still the question of, are we really getting it, right? So we might have to actually play back sounds to the dolphins and see what they do. That's probably the biggest challenge. I don't know how realistic it is, but it's possible. So we have, a long way to go, but we have the data and we're going to work through it and try to take a look at it.
Wow. Okay, so you provide sounds to the LLM that's been trained on sounds, and then it can generate new sounds because it has all that training data and it's recognizing the patterns. Is it, I don't know how to ask this, but is it a kind of a two-way interface where it's producing dolphin sounds and then attempting to put those into words that we would understand?
No, it's
Okay.
just producing the sound patterns, and we would
Okay.
take the sound patterns. We're actually right now trying to integrate it with another program we have that will label those sounds, for example,
Okay.
like A, B, B, C.
Okay.
And we're also working on an interface with an MIT colleague, Mark Hamilton. He's actually taking the video and the sound and creating an interface. So it makes us it's easier to track. Okay, let's go back to the video and find the sound pattern. So, we will probably just symbolically label it arbitrarily, but it still will tell us if there are patterns. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever be able to call them words, but I guess
Okay.
if we had a sound sequence and they were chasing a very specific type of fish, maybe eventually we'd find the label for, the mackerel versus the flounder, that kind of thing. If they have words, we don't know if they have words. I suspect it'd be pretty handy to have words. Like you can imagine if you're out in the deep water with your friends and family and a shark shows up, it'd probably be pretty handy to be able to label that shark as a dangerous tiger shark or a
Right.
harmless nurse shark, for example. So, and terrestrial animals, vervet monkeys, prairie dogs, we know they already have alarm calls that label specific predators. So we see that in evolution already with community animals, is that
Okay.
they have labels for specific predators so you can react specifically, right? So and it makes sense that those words would evolve for survival, right?
Mhm.
It'd be like if I yelled, "Look out!" and you'd be like, "Look where? Look where?"
Right.
Versus I said, "Asteroid," and you'd look up, right?
And
So,
yeah, exactly.
yeah. So it helps you maybe, well, I don't know if we'd survive an asteroid, but anyway, you'd have a few minutes
That's a
to think
question
about.
for another pod. But I'm curious
Yes.
because, and some of our listeners might be interested in the nuance as well. I certainly am. So, an alarm call that we might see with monkeys is different from language. Can you talk about kind of like the nuance there? Because to me, that sounds
Sure.
like a sound that's communicating something. So, how is that different from a language?
It's because it's labeling a specific object. So, like, they would have an alarm call for a leopard versus an eagle versus a
Okay.
snake, right? So it's a label. So it's called
Okay.
referential communication. So it refers to something versus if they're just like, say, the vervet monkeys are having a fight and they're screaming and scratching each other, whatever. That's just emotional kind of expression, and that's called a graded system of communication. So it's referential versus graded. So
Okay.
humans have both. I'm using words, which are referential, and you understand them, of course. But I'm also getting excited and I'm waving my hands and my voice is
Okay.
getting louder. So animals do that too, right? They express present, current activities, right? But if you have labels and words, that allows us to talk about the past and the future, right? What'd you do yesterday, versus what'd you learn at school today? You're at the dinner table. You're not talking about the food necessarily. You're talking to each other because you have words. So, yeah, that's the big question. And, maybe a lot of animals don't have something like that, but just evolutionarily, it makes a lot of sense for at least a long-lived mammal to be able to talk about things, plan things, maybe. It's just we have not had the tools to look at it. Some scientists have done experiments and it suggests a lot for sure. So language is kind of the last bastion of intelligence, right? Like animals use tools, they can understand abstract things. So they have a lot of the qualities of intelligence, but language still has yet to be really looked at, I think.
Want to lead your team into the AI future? Sidecar's AI Learning Hub for Teams equips your association with practical, on-demand AI education. From self-paced courses to live office hours, your whole team gets the skills to use AI without the jargon. Empower your team. Build AI confidence together. Visit sidecar.ai/LH4T to get started.
Our mission at Sidecar is to educate 1 million people in the association community around the world on artificial intelligence. And the good news is you can help. If you're enjoying this podcast, please take on the challenge to share it with one friend or colleague each time you listen. This will help us spread the word and hopefully bring 1 million association leaders and volunteers into the age of AI. I'm curious, in your 40 years of data collection, I'm trying to think here of things that might resonate with our association listeners. At a glance, right, dolphins and associations seem quite different, but I feel like something that might be relatable is the fact that you had 40 years of data collection. You've ridden out a lot of technological change in your career. And getting to this point where we have access to things like large language models, did you ever feel like your data wasn't ready for AI? That's something we hear a lot for associations. They have tons of unstructured data. They've got conference proceedings, course videos, transcripts, publications, all of this stuff. And they think, well, sure, we would love to maybe train a model, but everything's so messy. It's so all over the place. You as a researcher, maybe that wasn't as much of an issue, but can you talk about that?
Sure. So I would say our data sets are pretty clean as far as our sound sequences and the underwater video. We have what I call metadata, right? So for each like video segment that has the sound, we would know there's 4 mother and calf pairs. We know who they are. We know when the calves were born. We know their age. We know their sex. So that's the metadata we would lay on top of it to interpret it. So I guess in the sense of like a conference or meetings, if you've got a soundtrack, you've got the individuals, you've got the contextual cues, maybe in that case, keywords that come up in that. But right now, literally, that's still kind of a manual process for us.
Okay.
With the video and the sound, we can go back to our metadata. It's in another data set. It's all connected to one label, basically. The date, the time, the encounter number with the dolphins, and everything else is related to that. We know what the water temperature was at blah, 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 blah. But what's critical to look at is not necessarily a lot of that data, but it's about who's there, what they were doing, and the behavioral context. So, I think you could kind of do that for meetings and conferences. You could say it was a board meeting versus a sponsor discussion versus a staff meeting. So those are the keywords and the contexts where I would say that's where you have to separate your searching is look at the behavioral context. Like we might look at, here's an aggression video and here are the sequences of sound that fall out of that because we know these animals were fighting, they're males and they're trying to mate with a female, et cetera, et cetera. So I could see where a large language model could easily do that. I don't know about the searching abilities of an AI program would have to let you do that, right? Like search by keywords according to that segment. But I don't think it's impossible. It seems like that's fairly easy.
For sure.
So yeah, I don't know enough about the programs they're using, to be honest.
Right.
Just thinking in terms of, tagging things. And I guess you could even have voice recognition, right? You've got humans, right? You can do voice recognition. So you could actually pull out who's there saying what. I know the conference soundscape is busy and noisy, but I know people have been working on that for sure. Because we have the same thing with
100%.
dolphins, right? A bunch of dolphins are chatting. Who's chatting? What are they talking
Who's chatting? Who's saying what? Yeah, I guess maybe dolphin problems are not so dissimilar from human problems.
Yeah, no, they're not.
So you said metadata for you all is still fairly manual, but I'm thinking, as you were saying, AI could do a really good job potentially of watching the video of a dolphin interaction and then saying, this appears aggressive. Now, I don't know if it has enough training data to be able to do that as accurately as you could, but it's something to think about.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Can you talk a little bit about that first moment? In my research, it sounded like this was quite exciting. The first moment you heard DolphinGemma actually create I think they're called burst pulse sounds. Yeah, what was that like? Well,
it was like, wow, okay, it sounds like a bunch of dolphins.
But was it exciting to see that tech could do that? Or were you kind of like, I know this is possible?
No, I knew it was possible. And garbage in, garbage out, right? Depends on how it's trained, what data they have. And it's, something we're tweaking and working on as we go. And that's why the supervised part of it is still important. I believe that sincerely. I know with our early machine learning work, which was more us creating models and creating interfaces to process our data, it was very critical for me to look at the sound clusters and say, okay, these are all similar sounds. We'll call that cluster A and cluster B, et cetera. to supervise because computer doesn't really know what you're looking for. It's just looking for patterns and pulling them out, right? I mean, the classic story is the polar bear photos, right? When they were looking to identify individual polar bears, and the computer decided to look at the types of snow. So it was like, okay, got to point that out to the computer and then it adjusts, right? So, I mean, that's kind of cool though, because it could find patterns you didn't think were there that it's looking for. Or it's like the conference room, right? Where someone's, tapping their pen on the desk. And so the computer pulls that out as a cluster of sound, or someone's coughing, right? Is it critical? Probably not. But maybe this could be if someone's nervous or, who knows, right? So computer can do things for sure that we don't even think about.
You developed this wearable computer system called Chat, where you could actually potentially have, I guess, two-way conversation with dolphins. I want you to talk a little bit about that. And does that use any artificial intelligence?
Sure. So the Chat system, it's cetacean hearing and augmentation technology. It's basically an underwater computer we wear. And even though our primary work is to decoding their natural sounds, which is our bigger 40-year data set, another way to try to interact and understand dolphins is using a keyboard. That's been done historically. There's a whole history of dolphins and keyboard interfaces like you would have for primates. They'd be touching a keyboard, where dolphins have had acoustic interfaces, right? So Chat was designed to be a very simple system that had synthesized whistles in them that we created that are outside the dolphin's repertoire because we didn't want to insult them by saying something in dolphin, right? Like your mother's my old girlfriend.
I guess I never thought about that, but you're right.
Oh, you got to be careful. So, and it's only got like 4 words in it that are labels for objects they like to play with. Sargassum, seagrass.
Okay.
Then we take in a scarf because they like to drag things. And we only use it when they're playing with us. We don't interrupt their behavior. That's our protocol. But it's really designed to maybe create some mutual signals we could use together. It's kind of the second way you could maybe kind of get into the mind of a dolphin. And interestingly, a lot of the experimental work with other animals have used that kind of model where you create a keyboard or interface. And so you share words, like if we were different humans, right? In a culture, I might call this phone and then you call it Lala or whatever, right? So we agree, let's call it tutu. So now the word for phone is tutu, and you both understand that, even though you have your own languages.
Right.
So in some ways, I still believe this, although it's been a hard project with the dolphins. In some ways, it's almost easier to create a mutual language than to understand someone else's language. We see that in nature. We see species of dolphins that interact, for example, and they have mutual signals they use, but they don't necessarily know the whole language of the other species. So they have kind of critical signals apparently they need when they're together, and they've agreed on that somehow, some way. And birds, monkeys, other species do that for simpler interactions, right? I mean, you could probably never have a full conversation like you couldn't with a human if you only had 6 words you shared, a coffee and a tea and a biscuit or whatever. That'd be a very simple type of interaction. But it's good in the sense that it shows the other species you're reaching out. You're trying to empower them to communicate. For example, with the dolphins, if they mimic one of our synthetic whistles for an object, they get the object and we get to play together. And that's pretty high motivation for them because they like to play, right? We don't feed them or touch them or anything like that. But so species can be motivated simply by social interaction with each other. And that might be enough. So, but I think the richness of what we're going to find is going to be in their natural sound patterns and using the LLM. But so it's been interesting exploration. Science is so funny. Sometimes you find things you weren't looking for when you're looking for other things. And with the chat work, because we looked at how often and how they mimicked our whistles, or were trying to mimic, which they were in many, many different ways, we found a pretty cool way that they're trying to mimic that we didn't know really potentially existed in their sound repertoire. And so now we're going, ooh, we need to go back in our basic sound data and look for those patterns because we weren't looking for those because it's a weird thing they're doing. And it's like, it seems to be how they're preferring to mimic. And I'm like, okay, there you go. You've discovered something, maybe not what you wanted with results, but now you've discovered a way they might be communicating that you hadn't even seen before.
This is so fascinating. So they're mimicking this mutual, not language, but these mutual signals or words that you've created, but they're not necessarily understanding them, or do you think they are understanding the word?
Yeah, no, we haven't gotten to that point. It doesn't seem like they've been using it to like request the toys from us so much. I think it's because they can kind of get them themselves.
That's true, right?
I know it's like, oh, there's some sarcasm. I'll just go get it. But who knows? Maybe it's hidden in there when they're talking. Maybe they'll say, "Hey, did you see that sarcasm we played with the humans yesterday?" I don't know. I mean, because that's happened in captive studies where they've train them with synthetic whistles and then they go off and they play with a ball with each other and then they make that whistle. So it's kind of like, maybe they do. So yeah, I don't know though. I wouldn't say we're there, but we've been trying. Trying. Yeah, who knows? Maybe. And the chat system has been using a bit of DolphinGemma only in the sense of taking our synthetic whistles, prompting it in DolphinGemma, and then showing us different ways the dolphins might mimic, right? Projecting, again, generative AI, projecting how they might mimic. And they might give you like 100 different ways. And then we go through and say, well, we would accept this as a mimic, but maybe we would not accept this, right? So in the past, students would have to generate these sounds and say, okay, let's stretch it out. Let's put it up an octave. What do you accept as a mimic? So yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that have been involved with chat with machine learning and AI. So yeah, but it's a tough. I mean, poor Georgia Tech, Thad Starner and his students, they thought it'd be an easy project, and 15 years later, we're still working on it.
15 years later, we're just probably scratching the surface.
Exactly, but now we have like off-the-shelf equipment. We're using a Pixel phone. I mean, it's all like we can just take it in the water, and it's like a little box this big, and we wear it. But so that's all changed too. So as we go, here we go, technology.
Oh, man. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up because I did want to mention that DolphinGemma, I have the note here. I think it's 400 million parameters, which if you all have been listening to the podcast is pretty tiny. So it can run on device. I mean, some of the smaller frontier large language models that we talk about are like 3 billion parameters, 4 billion parameters. Yes. So 400 million is small. And that's incredible.
Like, what are those parameters? Like, how do you mean? Measuring all those parameters, I'm measuring 8 of them, manually.
Yes.
I know, it's crazy. But, we have to get more efficient with it because a lot of researchers don't have large data sets. Our data set is not large. It's large for my field, 40 years of data. But animal researchers don't always have volumes of data. So it's nice to get more efficient to really look at it.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you this question because I feel like you have a unique perspective as a researcher, as someone who's obviously passionate about animals and the environment. We tend to be very optimistic on the podcast about artificial intelligence in terms of the good it will do in the world, but we're also realistic in that it can be used by bad actors. It does have an impact, a large impact on the environment, the water needed to cool, the energy required. So for you, as someone who's just very aware of the earth and animals, and as I said, has it been tough for you to go back and forth with like AI for good, AI for bad, or it sounds like you're very clear on the potential good that AI can do, but has that been a struggle for you?
It has not been a struggle. I mean, I'm very positive that the complexities of natural systems, ecosystems, climate change, hurricanes, whatever, these are all places where data is complicated. And I think AI is probably going to allow us for the first time to really look at these complicated systems and understand them. I do not know how the energy issue is going to be solved with AI needs. I mean, I think as a country and as a global entity, we all need to be thinking about that, of course. And maybe AI can tell us how to do it, right? How can you get more efficient with your energy? Is it that, we need more solar and wind, or is it some other way that AI, is it quantum computing and might reduce that kind of thing? I don't know enough about the physics of that, honestly, but I've been positive about it because I think it's going to spur science on if we allow science in this country still to be looked at in some detail. We're going to need scientists in some of these agencies that have had a tough time with the guillotine. But, if we're going to look at the planet, and there are other countries on the globe that are, taking it on too. So U.S. is not necessarily leading the way, but I think we still have great resources in this country, a lot of great brains and a lot of great agencies and teams. And yeah, I would like to see AI continue with analyzing complicated data for the natural world for sure.
I think you're right. We talk about the medical breakthroughs, like you mentioned earlier. We talk about weather, material science. We're on the cusp of what seems like an explosion of innovation and breakthroughs that I hope will outweigh some of the potential negative impacts we see with such a rapidly growing technology. Dr. Denise, what is next on your horizon? I mean, DolphinGemma is a huge feat, and I know we haven't reached the finish line. It sounds like it's going to be ongoing, but what are you looking ahead to for AI in general, or perhaps in your field specifically?
Well, honestly, once we work through our data sets, which, will take some time. I mean, the field is fast, but still going through looking at the data and trying to make sense of it is still going to take time and human brains. I honestly would love to see, and I may try to promote this a bit, is to get other researchers to put in their data sets. Maybe we go around the world and collect more dolphin data of, from species that maybe we can't get 40 years, but if DolphinGemma becomes really efficient, maybe we can spend a month or two getting data and then throw it in there. I think that's realistic. I really do. Once DolphinGemma gets really going and tweaked a bit. So I think, again, I feel really lucky where I've worked and what I've seen in our data. But I think the world is a lot larger. There's a lot of critters in the ocean we can get data from and throw it in there. And, I just think it would open up, it's not just spotted dolphins that have this complicated. It's every dolphin species or a bunch of them around the world. And we need to protect their habitat so they can thrive. It's their right as a species to thrive on the earth without us destroying it. And I think maybe that would call attention to it. So that's one thing I'm kind of looking ahead as I still try to process our own data, but I think it could be worth doing. And we'll see about other species. I think we'll have to see that. I think DolphinGemma might be able to incorporate non-dolphin species eventually.
Okay.
I think the architecture is maybe designed to train, the LLM with other, terrestrial species, for example. I think that was the ultimate goal. So we'll see how that evolves, but it might not be limited to ocean creatures, hopefully.
Wow. And you're going to be joining us at DigitalNow 2025, which is actually next week. So we're recording this on October 30th. I'll be interviewing you there on the panel again. So for all of you listening that are attending, you'll get to hear a different version of this conversation, a shorter version. But Dr. Denise, where can people keep up with you, keep up with the work you're doing? Let us know.
Sure. Our major website is the Wild Dolphin Project, .org. We're on Facebook, Wild Dolphin Project, Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Blue Sky. Nowadays people can find you, right? So, we try to do our social media, Facebook, YouTube. We have a YouTube channel for Wild Dolphin Project. So, join us.
Absolutely. We'll include those links in our show notes. Dr. Denise, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Again, congrats on your selection to the Time AI 100. And for everyone joining us at DigitalNow, you will get to see her in person next week.
All right. Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Sidecar Sync podcast. If you want to dive deeper into anything mentioned in this episode, please check out the links in our show notes. And if you're looking for more in-depth AI education for you, your entire team, or your members, head to sidecar.ai.